Now behind bars after law enforcement found several narcotics in their apartment, as well as a child. It was around 7 this morning when the Alice Police Department Special Crimes Unit and SWAT team executed a search warrant at an apartment on Olmito near East Front Street there in Alice. Once inside, crews found narcotics in plain view: cocaine, crystal meth, and nearly 80 pills, as well as baggies, scales, and other paraphernalia associated with the selling of narcotics. Leanna Saenz and Jesus Segura were arrested and booked into the Jim Wells County Jail. The child found inside the apartment is now with a family member. CPS has been notified.
At 3:18 a.m., inside a locked child welfare records office in Austin, Texas, a junior caseworker opened a file that should have led to a foster home. Instead, it led to an address that had been empty for 6 years. The office was quiet. Most of the lights were off. A few desks still had coffee cups beside half-finished reports. The printer near the back wall clicked every few seconds, pushing out overnight placement updates for emergency cases across the state. On paper, everything looked normal. The file belonged to a 10-year-old child named Maya Ellis, marked as transferred into emergency foster placement 8 months earlier. The system said she had been moved to a licensed home through a nonprofit contractor called Bright Path Family Services. The placement had been approved. The monthly care payments had been processed. The case supervisor had signed off. But when the caseworker entered the foster address into the county property database, she found something that made her stop. The home did not exist. Not anymore. The lot had been demolished years earlier after a fire. There was no foster family there, no active license, no inspection record, no school enrollment nearby, no medical appointment linked to the child after the date of transfer. The caseworker checked again. Then she checked another file connected to Bright Path. Same problem. Then a third. Same agency. Same missing inspection. Same payment pattern. By 3:41 a.m., she had found 27 children listed as placed through homes that did not appear to exist. At first, she thought the system had mixed old addresses with new case numbers. Child welfare databases were old, overloaded, and full of errors. But the more she searched, the worse it became. Some children were marked safe in homes that had never been licensed. Some files had signatures from supervisors who were not working on the date listed. Some medical checkups had been billed, but no clinic could confirm the visit. And one approval code appeared again and again. It belonged to the office of Elaine Mercer, the state CPS director. At 3:52 a.m., the caseworker sent an internal alert to the emergency oversight line. What she did not know was that federal agents had been waiting for that exact kind of alert. For nearly 13 months, the FBI and DHS had been investigating strange payment patterns inside the Texas child welfare system. Millions of dollars were moving to nonprofit contractors that appeared clean on paper, but every time investigators tried to follow the children connected to those payments, the trail became blurred. Wrong addresses, missing school records, disconnected phone numbers, supervisors who approved files they later claimed they had never seen. By 4:17 a.m., federal vehicles were parked outside the main CPS headquarters. This was no longer a database error. It was the first visible crack in a system that had been hiding in plain sight. At 4:29 a.m., FBI agents entered the CPS headquarters through the employee entrance on the north side of the building. DHS investigators followed with digital forensics teams and state auditors. They did not announce the raid to the entire building. They moved floor by floor, quietly sealing records rooms, copying access logs, and blocking remote deletion from the case management system. The first team went to the emergency placement unit. The second team went to finance. The third team took the elevator directly to the executive floor. At 4:37 a.m., they reached Elaine Mercer's office. The door was locked. A thin line of light showed beneath it. An agent knocked twice. No answer. The breach team opened the door. Inside, the room looked like any public official's office. Framed awards, child welfare reform posters, a photo from a charity event, a shelf filled with binders labeled family safety, emergency placement, and contractor oversight. But the desk told a different story. There were files stacked beside Mercer's computer, each marked with red priority tabs. The names were different, but the structure was almost identical. Emergency placement approved. Contractor assigned. Payment released. case closed for field review. Agents checked the first file against the state database. The child had no current school enrollment. The second file had no verified foster address. The third had a placement home listed under a license that expired 4 years earlier. Within the first 20 minutes, investigators found 112 questionable case files inside the director's office alone. Then a digital forensic technician noticed something under the desk. A private router. It was not part of the state network. The cable ran behind a filing cabinet, through a small opening in the wall, and into a locked storage room beside the office. The 8th team headed toward Caleb Rourke's consulting firm. At 6:27 a.m., the command center gave the order. Execute. At Bright Path, agents entered just as employees were arriving for the morning shift. A receptionist tried to lock the back office. A manager attempted to carry a laptop bag out through a side door. Inside the file room, investigators found shelves of placement folders arranged by county. At first, the files looked complete. Then agents noticed the same foster parent signatures appearing across multiple homes in different cities. One signature showed up in Austin, Dallas, El Paso, and Corpus Christi within the same week. Another foster address had been used for 183 placements in 14 months. But when field agents reached that address, they found a closed insurance office with mail piled on the floor. At the San Antonio contractor office, investigators found printed case summaries. At 6:58 a.m., FBI agents reached Elaine Mercer's home outside Austin. Her car was in the driveway. Her phone was on the kitchen counter. She was not there. In the office upstairs, agents found $312,000 in cash, hidden inside a locked cabinet, contractor payment summaries, and a folder containing offshore account paperwork. In the fireplace, they found burned paper fragments. One piece was still readable. It showed a partial message. Guardian wants the files moved before review. That confirmed what investigators had started to suspect. Elaine Mercer was not the highest layer. Someone above or beside her was directing the operation. At 7:44 a.m., FBI cyber analysts began breaking through the first layer of the hidden server recovered from the CPS director's office. What opened on the screen was not a normal backup system. It was a shadow case management platform. Internally, the network called it the Guardian Ledger. The system tracked child welfare case numbers, placement values, contractor assignments, inspection status, payment release dates, audit risk, and field worker activity. Every case had a status. Green meant verified placement. Yellow meant delayed review. Red meant paper placement. Paper placement did not mean a child was safe. It meant the file was profitable. The server showed how the network operated. A child would enter emergency care. The case would be routed to an outside contractor. The placement would be marked urgent. Field verification would be delayed. Payments would begin. Then the file would be moved, closed, or merged before an auditor could complete the review. Sometimes the same child's identity appeared under more than one contractor. Sometimes a real placement was used as cover for fake billing. Sometimes a child who had aged out of care remained active in the payment system for months. Investigators also found forged inspection notes, fake counseling records, transportation logs for trips that never happened, and medical visit reimbursements tied to clinics that had no record of seeing the children listed. Then analysts opened the user profile section. Elaine Mercer was there. Her role was labeled the chair. The chair approved contractor access, delayed audits, and flagged files for executive handling. But above her was another profile. No full name, only a code name, the Guardian. At first, analysts assumed the Guardian was just the name of the ledger. Then they found messages. Guardian approved the West route. Guardian wants Mercy Ridge protected. Guardian says close the Austin files before Monday. Guardian cleared the director. That changed everything. The Guardian was not a system, it was a person. At 8:19 a.m., investigators traced the Guardian account to a private compliance firm registered under Caleb Rourke. Rourke had helped design placement review systems years earlier. He knew how cases moved through state offices. He knew when audits were triggered. He knew how emergency overrides worked. He knew the exact point where a file could be pushed from public oversight into contractor control. More importantly, he knew the system was overwhelmed. Caseworkers were handling too many children. Supervisors were approving too many emergency placements. Judges were relying on reports they did not have time to personally verify. Contractors were trusted because the state needed beds, homes, and services immediately. Rourke understood the pressure. Investigators believed he turned that pressure into a business model. At 8:46 a.m., Elaine Mercer was located in a private parking garage near the Austin airport. She was sitting inside a black SUV with a suitcase in the back seat. When agents approached, she did not run. She asked for an attorney before they even read the warrant. Inside the suitcase, investigators found 2 phones, $96,000 in cash, printed contractor lists, and a flash drive hidden inside a makeup bag. The flash drive contained message logs between Mercer, Rourke, contractor executives, and billing managers. One message had been sent less than an hour after agents entered CPS headquarters. It said, "Burn the ledger, move Guardian." At 9:37 a.m., federal agents entered Caleb Rourke's consulting office in downtown Austin. The office was calm, glass conference room, legal binders, child welfare policy books, a framed award for public service hanging near the entrance. But inside a restricted records room, agents found the blueprint. Maps of regional CPS offices, lists of overloaded counties, contractor scoring sheets, audit calendars, emergency placement loopholes, and a wall chart showing how long it took each county to verify a home after payment had already been released. On the chart, someone had circled the longest delays in red. Those were the places the network targeted first. In the center of the room was a whiteboard with one phrase written across the top: "Need creates speed." That was the design. The network did not hack the child welfare system. It used the system's desperation against itself. When children needed immediate placement, officials moved fast. When officials moved fast, paperwork came later. When paperwork came later, contractors got paid before anyone verified the truth. And if the right people controlled the file, the truth never caught up. At 10:14 a.m., agents reached Rourke's private home outside Lake Travis. He was found in a study with 2 laptops open. One was running a deletion program. The other was connected to an external hard drive labeled Guardian Archive. Cyber agents disconnected both machines before the deletion finished. Inside the archive, investigators found payment records, contractor ownership documents, case file changes, fake inspection templates, Mercer's approval history, and private messages between Rourke and executives at all 5 contractor groups. He had kept everything. Not because he was careless, because the records gave him control. If Mercer tried to blame him, he had her approvals. If contractors tried to walk away, he had their invoices. If supervisors denied involvement, he had their messages. The operation was not built on trust. It was built on leverage. By the end of the day, federal authorities confirmed the scale of the takedown. 44 people were arrested across Texas. More than 9,000 child welfare case files were flagged for emergency review. 5 contractors were suspended, 3 billing offices were seized, 2 records facilities were shut down. More than $1.2 billion in placement payments, grants, reimbursements, and contractor billing was under investigation. Federal agents froze more than $43 million in cash, property, and business accounts. And emergency teams began the slow process of locating children whose files had been moved, merged, delayed, or falsely closed. But investigators said the numbers were only one part of the case. The real damage was inside the records. A file that said safe when no one had checked. A payment that said placed when no home had been verified. A contractor that said service provided when no service had happened. A signature that made everything look official. For years, the system had been moving paperwork faster than people could ask questions. And the network used that speed to hide what was missing. The worst part was how ordinary it looked. No one had to break into the building. No one had to force open a safe. No one had to steal a child in the middle of the night. The forms were already there. The payment codes were already there. The emergency process was already there. All the network had to do was find the pressure points and put the right people in place. When the evidence was sealed inside federal court files, one investigator described the case in a sentence that stayed with the task force. They did not hide the children from the system, he said. They hid them inside it. The raid at CPS headquarters exposed one network. The arrests shut down one machine. But the files left behind raised a question federal investigators could not ignore. If more than 9,000 case files could be moved through a system built to protect children, how many other missing files are still waiting to be opened?